Homer's lower body turned into a chicken. He laid an egg that provided delicious meals for the whole family. They lived in a fairy tale world, but due to financial struggles, Homer threw his son and daughter out of the house to fend for themselves. Lisa and Bart found a small cabin, 3 bowls of food. The first bowl was very hot, the second was very cold, and only the smallest bowl was normal. Bart, however, mixed up the bowls and happily devouring both. Just then, 3 bears returned to their home. Lisa and Bart seized the opportunity to escape, blocking the door, but they were unaware that Goldilocks was still inside the room. As they continued on, they stumbled upon a candy house, and a witch warmly invited them inside. However, Lisa was treated as a servant and Bart was fed like a pig. Just when Lisa was about to be thrown into the oven, Homer appeared and bit down, collapsing the candy house. The witch was furious and used her magic to transform Homer into a creature with a fish head and chicken body. After a fierce struggle, Homer managed to throw the witch into the oven. The upper half of Homer's body returned to normal, but unfortunately, his lower half could never revert back. Lisa grew a Bart on her neck, and they started fighting right in front of the teacher. The teacher had no choice but to place a globe between them to stop the brawl. That day, Bart wrapped a kite string around his neck and drifted off into a deep sleep. Just then, a helicopter flew by and accidentally crashed into Bart's kite. When Bart woke up, he found himself sewn onto Lisa's shoulder. Lisa still had control over their body, kept playing girly games. Bart was unhappy. He didn't want to be Lisa's subordinate. He covered Lisa's face with a pillow and was shocked to discover that he had gained control of the body. To keep Lisa asleep, he slipped sleeping pills into her lunch and then tied himself to a piece of wood, facing a huge slicer. Lisa woke up and couldn't believe how crazy Bart was. She adjusted her position and successfully broke free from him, just when she was about to celebrate. Fortunately, they both survived and ended up as conjoined twins, including the doctor.
Vines crawled onto people's bodies, starting to take root and sprout. They absorbed human genes and transformed into human-like forms. Bart returned home, wanting to tell his mom about what had happened, but Marge, while trimming the leaves on her head, approached Bart menacingly. Fortunately, Maggie stepped in just in time to save Bart. Meanwhile, the whole town was filled with tree men, and the struggle between humans was about to erupt. Lisa realized her time was short. Just as she was about to say goodbye to Bart, she discovered that he had already turned into a tree man.
The last sound you hear will be...
When Lisa opened her eyes again, she was warmly welcomed by the tree men. They had built a paradise for humans here. It turned out that the tree men, who had been lurking on Earth, discovered that humanity had been ruled by their phones. To save the humans, they spread spores across the planet, bringing them to this place. Before Lisa could feel excited, she noticed that her family was once again engrossed in their phones. The tree men had not anticipated that the Christmas tree would fulfill people's desire to play on their phones.
A dolphin began slapping him wildly. This all happened because Lisa felt sorry for the dolphins at the aquarium. She opened the gate and released one of the dolphins. Little did she know, this dolphin was a leader. It gathered all the dolphins and surrounded a man, enacting a crazy revenge on him. With a wave of its fin, the dolphin leader signaled thousands of dolphins to swim onto land, where they stood up, officially launched their plan. At that moment, a penguin crashed into the goal net. They stormed into people's homes, treating them as food. News reports about the dolphins began to flood the television, causing panic among the people who gathered to discuss countermeasures. Suddenly, the dolphins burst in and kicked away the gun. The dolphin leader broke through the front door and approached the podium, announcing its intention to take over the land and drive humans into the sea. Furious, Homer led the people in a rebellion against the dolphins, but after a fierce battle, they lost, and the Simpsons ended up living on the sea. Homer the Ghost was helping an old woman cross the street when he accidentally fumbled. The reason Homer was so eager to help was that he wanted to go to heaven. That day, his luck was a bit off, but he still insisted on heading to work. Just then, a billboard fell and crashed onto Homer's car, and a flying pickaxe landed right on his head. When he arrived at the office, a snake had latched onto his arm. Homer evaded various dangers, but couldn't escape broccoli. He couldn't believe he had eaten broccoli again. However, heaven refused to accept Homer. He had to do one good deed within the day to earn his right to enter. As the final minute approached, Homer didn't accomplish any good deed and sat despairingly on the stairs. At that moment, Baby Stroller came rolling down the stairs. Homer initially wanted to scold the noisy baby, but instead, he ended up saving its life. Having completed a good deed, Homer returned to the gates of heaven, but unfortunately, God hadn't witnessed the act, so the unlucky Homer was cast into hell. noodles came flowing out of Homer's nose.
More bread, please.
That was the consequence of gluttony. On Halloween, a crowd gathered outside the Simpson house, filled with people complaining they were victims of the kids' pranks. Just as Homer was about to comfort them, a pig fell on his head. The kid stood on the roof, laughing at him. Watching his neighbor getting bullied, Flanders transformed into a devil, taking the disobedient kids down to hell, where he demonstrated the consequences of the 7 deadly sins one by one. The angry gardener kicked a machine, which then came to life and turned into a robot. The 3rd deadly sin was pride, where a boastful doctor was hit by a truck and became deformed. The 4th, sloth, Homer appeared again, getting sliced up by a hammock. Finally, the bartender gathered the remaining 3 sins all by himself: lust, greed, and envy. Seeing all of this, the kids were terrified and swore they would never misbehave again.
Well then, my work is done.
This was the most thrilling water park. After a round of fun, the number of people survived was very few. Homer's childhood joy had been mocking those fools with his friends. This day, he excitedly took his whole family to relive the experience at the water park, only to find that it had changed drastically. Seeing the safe attractions, Homer became furious. So, Homer secretly took Lisa and Bart to the old site of the water park. They climbed to the top of the slide. Homer unilaterally opened the water gate, deciding to give the kids a taste of his childhood thrill. Homer picked up the kids, and they whooshed down the slide, dodging obstacles along the way, finally going through a huge loop and splashing into the water. They were all thrilled, laughing and chatting as they returned to Marge. But soon after, Bart and Lisa's stomachs began to hurt, and their faces turned pale. Quarantine personnel rushed in and sealed off the area. Ultimately, Lisa and Bart ended up with a bacterial infection, leaving their faces covered in red spots. A ghost appeared on the school bus, and in Lisa's shock, she pulled out a plastic bag and slipped it over House's face. Rachel was Lisa's imaginary best friend, but as she grew up, Lisa no longer needed her. So, Rachel began to create accidents frequently, just to become Lisa's only one. Now, she set her sights on Marge. Lisa arrived, jumping up to snatch the iron away.
Why can't a real person like me this much?
Because nobody else can see me.
I can see you.
Rachel picked up a pair of tongs and charged at Homer. In a moment of desperation, Homer conjured up his best friend in his imagination.
I don't take orders from a hot dog.
Rachel crumpled it up and tossed it into the microwave. As the machine operated, the hot dog transformed into a puddle of meat sauce. Rachel tried to attack Marge again, but Lisa stepped in front of her. Using her imagination, she made Rachel disappear from this world. Lisa lost her best friend, and Homer, who also lost his best friend, felt heartbroken. He gave the hot dog a final resting place in his stomach.